Today is Thursday, April 30th, the last day of April, and this is our language arts overview. The first thing you're going to do is read your partner play. And the partner play today is another one about landforms, just like we're learning about in science in second grade. We learned about landforms. Read that once or twice with a partner. It's about hills and mountains. You can also read it without a partner, and you can read it more than once or twice. Next, we have been talking about the sound ul at the end of words, and that when ul is part of a syllable and you're dividing the word into syllables, you usually grab that last consonant to go with that side of the division of a syllable. So little, little, we keep that T when we divide the word. Subtle, we keep that T. Ripple, we keep the P with the ul. Paddle, we keep the D with the ul. Middle, we keep the D with the ul. And bubble, we keep the B, the B with the ul. All right, so that's if we were dividing it into syllables. What you're going to do on this paper is you're going to find the spelling word to match each definition. So the word small, small, which word means small? You know that one, little, and I'm going to write little right here. To tear apart. Which one means to tear apart? Lit, little, set, settle, rip. Oh, I know that rip means to tear apart. I'm circling these. Sometimes I cross them out. You can do whatever you want, but try to make some kind of mark so that you know that you've used that word already, and it will help you to find out which word matches the meaning. If you don't know, remember you can skip that one and go back again. At the bottom, you have four questions where you are using context clues to figure out the answer. I got a new blank of crayons. I got a new, which word makes sense? A new lit, a new pad of paper maybe, a new set of crayons. That makes sense. So you look at the context of the word and see what makes the most sense filling that in. All right, if you have already crossed some out from up here, it might be easier to decide which word to fill in based on the context clues and what's left up here. The next thing you're going to do is we're talking about adjectives that compare. We've talked about comparing two things, and we've talked about comparing more than two. So when you're comparing two things, you add ER. If you're comparing like two people running, and you could say, Jose is faster than Miguel. But if you're comparing more than two things, three or more things, you would say Jose is faster than Miguel and Michael. All right, so ER is what you use when you're comparing two things, and EST when you're comparing more than two things. So let's do a couple of these together. Our group had a blank task than the other group. So it looks like they're only talking about one other. And so our group had a harder task than the other group. So harder is the right answer. You could fill in that dot or you could circle it. If it said the other groups, you would know that you were comparing to more than one, so you would have chosen hardest. Our group had the hardest task of all the groups. But since you're just comparing one, you say harder. We had to make a model of the blank animal in the world. All right, so we know that there are more than two animals in the world. There are lots of animals. And so we would want to choose an EST word. Let's try it and see how it sounds. We had to make a model of the biggest animal in the world. what about this? We had to make a model of the bigger animal in the world. So we know that there's more than 2 animals in the world, so biggest is going to be the answer. Going on, a blue whale is bigger than any other animal. A blue whale is biggest than any other animal. So because they're using the word than, we're just comparing it to like one at a time. And so you would say bigger, because that makes more sense. Using than makes it so that you're just comparing one at a time. A blue whale is biggest than any other animal. Doesn't make sense when you use the than. If you said a blue whale is the biggest of any other animal, that's when you would use biggest. But in this case, a blue whale is bigger than any other animal. So that's your key there. When you're using the word than, you're just comparing one at a time. Let's do one more together. Our teacher let us use the larger table in the room or the largest table in the room. So usually at school there's more than 2 tables, and so our teacher let us use the largest. That's another key word. When you say the, look at that, the and largest, and up here you're saying the. When you say that, you're usually using the EST word. Let's keep going together and see if that continues to make sense. When we see than, it's usually comparing 2 things, and when we see the, we're usually more than 2. So than after the word or the before. So I'll continue doing this with you. Mary wanted the paint to look blank than the blue in the picture. To look bluer than. So here again we have than, and bluer makes more sense. Mary wanted the paint to look bluer than the blue in the picture, or Mary wanted the paint to look bluest than the blue in the picture. So do you see that? Using than makes it so that you're just comparing 2 things. Let's try it again and see if that works. Our second sketch was blank than the first one. Our second sketch was nicer than the first one. Our second sketch was nicest than the first one. So once again, nicer. And we can tell that we're only comparing 2 things because the first one and the second sketch. So that's 2 things you're comparing. All right. The whale's eye was blank than its mouth. So we're comparing the eye to its mouth, and we see that keyword than again. So we know we're going to be using the ER word, smaller. The whale's eye was smaller than its mouth. And the last one, number 8, we thought our whale was the blank animal in the class. So we see the before the finer animal in the class or the finest. It's finest. All right. Sometimes it's super obvious if you're using or EST, or EST, but sometimes you want to think about how it sounds and look for those special words that help you. All right, the last thing you're going to do today, besides making sure you write that letter to Ridwan and getting it in the mail, is to write a story about what an astronaut would see on a trip in the space shuttle. We had a story about space yesterday, about what it's like to be an astronaut in the astronaut handbook. And so imagine yourself as an astronaut in the space shuttle and write a story about what you would see on a trip. You can draw a picture of it right here. And then remember to have an introductory sentence, such as, astronauts travel on the space shuttle. Let's just write that in. Astronauts travel on the space shuttle. That's a special on the space shuttle. I would think that you would use capitals, but maybe not. Maybe if you named the space shuttle, that would be a better way to use capitals. But that's your introduction. Astronauts travel on the space shuttle. And then you would say, they see the sun. And then maybe you'd say, the sun is bright. They see the moon. And then maybe describe the moon. Or you can say, they see many things. They see many things. And here's where you could use your first, next, then last. First, comma, they see, and then name it. Then use some descriptive words too about that, what they see. Next, comma, then comma. And you can use last, comma also, or finally. And if you need more space, you can turn the page over and write on the back. There are no lines, but you can draw some or just estimate your lines, like just use the just try to draw lines. If they're crooked, it doesn't matter. And then go back and check for your capital letters, end marks, spaces between your words, and complete thoughts. Does it make sense? And I think here, probably you don't need to have capitals for space shuttle. Up here in the question, I didn't put capitals. That's something we can look into. See, teachers don't always have all the answers. Sometimes they have to look things up too. All right, enjoy that writing. Send me a picture of it if you can. And you can color those little pictures too. See you tomorrow for Fun Friday.